Shocking news!
Shocking news.
A Disney remake of a classic film is bad?
I'd never actually seen Mulan before. I never really did the whole classic Disney thing as a kid. I'm young. To me, Mulan is classic Disney. You know, I've only been alive since, Tuesday. And it is Tuesday now, as I'm recording this. So, someone should really have warned me about this film. I was very impressed with this picture. It is a beautifully crafted story that knows exactly what it wants to be. Let's take a look at the first scene in which we meet Mulan. In it, we see her tie a bag of chicken feed to this very sweet but possibly not quite all there doggo, then tie a bone in front of his face so he'll chase it, leaving a trail of chicken feed as he goes, thus feeding the chickens. Cock. Hey, look at me! I used an ironic laugh track! I'm a YouTuber! The doggo does, however, make a big mess, even in places of great cultural significance. Okay, so Mulan has now done a thing. Singular, one thing. And you may not even realize it, but the film has already effortlessly established the most important parts of her character. She's doing her house chores happily and willingly. She's very happy to help, implying that she's happy to care for others and motivated to do so. But she doesn't do it in the traditional way, the way that she would be expected to. We now know she's a free thinker who will happily cast aside the expectations of her culture if she thinks she can see a better way. The film goes out of its way to show you this by having her solution make a mockery of this. And finally, we now know how she approaches problems. She's innovative and will find imaginative ways to use the resources that she has available to her to accomplish her goals. She's a lateral thinker, finding solutions to problems that other people wouldn't see. It's not just that she's smart, it's more specific than that. It's an affinity for problem solving. It's the way she's smart, the way she thinks. And when it comes to problem solving, her creativity is her greatest asset. We've watched her do one thing. I actually fucking adore this film. It's these character traits that inform her decisions for the rest of the story. But before we can see the impact they actually have, the film has something else very important to establish. And that's the world in which she lives. Before we can start worrying about the threat presented by the Huns, we see Mulan taking her woman test, in which she's assessed against the standards a woman is expected to meet in her culture.
Now, pour the tea.
Fucking hell, looks like those tea pouring classes finally paid off, eh? The purpose of this sequence is to establish the life that Mulan is expected to lead. She's expected to adhere to a great many standards that don't really suit her as a person, and with that, the most important pieces of this story are well established. We know exactly who Mulan is, and she's the perfect character to take on the villain of this story. A rigid and strict society that places great expectations on people, not based on what they're actually good at, but based on arbitrary demographics they happen to be a part of. What, did you think I was gonna say the Huns? No, you've seen more than one pretentious YouTube video before. Oh! The rest of the story is a product of those character traits we've established about Mulan interacting with the rigid world she lives in. When one man from every family is summoned to join the army to repel the Hun invasion, Mulan's father, who's old and has trouble walking, is expected to go to war. Simply because he's a man, and the only man in his family. And the able-bodied Mulan can't go in his place because she's a woman. Spoilers from this point onwards. Yeah, if you've not seen this film, she pretends to be a man, goes behind her father's back, and goes in his place. It is one of the most badass scenes put to 2D animation, in which she knowingly gives up the respect of people around her by going against the values of the culture in which she lives, and commits to putting her own life on the line to prevent the needless death of her father. People do not respect her for this decision. Her family, the ghosts of her ancestors, even her fellow soldiers whose lives she's saved by the point in the story where they find out she's a woman, see this as her spitting in the face of culture and want nothing to do with it. But she does it anyway. This decision can only be made with a motivation to help others. It can only be made with a willingness to put aside the ways of the culture in which she lives if she thinks that she herself knows better, and it's an innovative, creative solution that takes thinking out of the box to come up with. This is probably the most important decision she makes throughout the course of the story. It puts the film's events into motion, it's what the film is about, and it's driven by those character traits we establish with her first action. Let's take a look at a slightly later scene in which Mulan is training alongside her fellow soldiers. One of the ways in which they train involves their captain challenging them to climb a huge pole while carrying two large weights. Not a single soldier in the group is able to accomplish this task until Mulan comes up with the idea to use the weights, something that is supposed to increase the level of challenge, not as a hindrance, but as a tool to help her accomplish the goal. Another win for her innovation and willingness to try new things. Then, again, later in the film, her small band of troops find themselves face to face with the entire Han army. Their resources? One cannon that can fire one explosive, a previously established tool of their army. As the soldiers prepare to fire the cannon at the oncoming forces, Mulan grabs it and runs away with it. She uses it to intentionally cause an avalanche, which wipes out the majority of the attacking Huns. Another win for her innovation and willingness to use things in ways that they aren't quite intended. All done for the sake of helping people, and freezing a lot of other people to death. Not only is she a well-crafted, strong, and consistent character, the methods by which she triumphs in this story are very important to its meaning. If this disabled man was forced to go to war because he's a man, he would have most likely died. Pointlessly. Something, by the way, he wanted to do because he felt it was his duty, because the values and traditions of his culture have been so deeply drilled into him. And if Mulan hadn't been allowed to go because she's a woman, she wouldn't have tipped the scales. China would have lost. This story has one big thing to say. Fuck the perpetuation and enforcement of tradition for tradition's sake. Embrace progress. If there's a convention that isn't valuable by virtue of its own merits, it can go. Which is why it's so meaningful that Mulan doesn't just win the war by being a good soldier, who's good at combat and discipline and everything else that soldiers are expected to do. She does it by putting aside the way that things are supposed to be done and using her own innovation to win the day. Every victory she wins is won by virtue of her disregarding the instructions and coming up with her own new way to do things. She is a perfect protagonist for this story because she represents the antithesis of the conservation of regressive traditions through authoritarianism and social expectations. I want to rescript that so it sounds less like a high school essay, but I hadn't seen this film or the remake, but on a whim decided I would check them both out because I thought they might be a fun topic for a video, and I found one of my new favourite films in the process. That's not to say it's flawless, it has a couple of things I would call issues, but these are minor things. For example, I think Mulan's weakest moment of innovation is when she sees her fellow soldiers trying to bash down this door to get in to save the Emperor, and declares that this solution won't be quick enough, they won't get to the Emperor in time. Instead, she opts to dress them as women in the hopes that this will help them sneak past the guards, because that'll be a much quicker solution. But that's the original. It's great. Let's watch the remake, shall we? I mean, it's about time somebody did. Oh hey, remember when this logo meant something? Well, something good. Disney. Let's get some of the surface level stuff out of the way first. The action scenes in this film are an absolute mess, using nauseating quick cutting to distract you from the fact that not even the film knows what's going on in them. Call me old-fashioned, but when I'm watching an action sequence, I like to be able to tell what's happening in it without slowing it down. But let's actually take a closer look at some of the things that the film is quick cutting over here. Here's a scene where some Ruran warriors, they're the villains in this film by the way, Rurans, not Huns, it's more historically accurate. I'm sure that attention to detail will really pay off. Here's the scene where they capture the Emperor. Whoa, slow down, what happened there? That was just a splurge of random motion. Let's watch it again. Cut. Okay, so they shoot some arrows with ropes tied to them at the ground. They run around in a circle to restrict his movement. I'm following so far. I've also noticed how the ropes are clearly just in the hands of the Rurans and not tied to anything. Hey, if those ropes were all tied to stuff up there, that would probably stop the Rurans from running like that, wouldn't it? Then cut to the Emperor, then cut to him again, then cut to them hoisting the ropes to... hang on, what happened? Wait, cut to the Emperor's ass. Now his head, and now the ropes are just coming from the sky? Hang on. A lot of people complain that quick cutting in action scenes makes it hard to tell what's going on, but in this film that appears to be intentional, to hide the fact that what's happening on screen is complete and utter nonsense. Let's take a look at this part, and when something questionable happens, I'll slow it down. Okay, I take that back. The whole scene is kind of questionable. But I mean something questionable that they try to hide with a quick cut, rather than something that they just present to their audience like, can you look directly at this, please? So they grunt at each other for about 3 minutes. Then, if we slow it down, we see Mulan pushes away at the blades, Borikan is pushed back, and then Mulan throws her sword away. In real time, this might happen too quickly for you to notice. I noticed though. I assume that the intended interpretation of this scene is that you see a load of fast, confusing movement and then, oh, Mulan has lost her sword. I guess she must have been disarmed. At best, this action scene is too confusing for you to properly follow the events. At worst, you might actually notice what happens in it. So, this live-action remake doesn't have very good action. It's filmed very poorly in a way that fails to adequately communicate to the audience what's happening in the scenes, but this might have been on purpose because the scenes themselves are so bad that the filmmakers might have wanted to hide them. This reminds me of a time, and this is completely true by the way, everything I say is, never question me, that I was around 16, 17 taking a psychology midterm that I was not at all prepared for. As I started writing it, I was realizing how little I actually knew about the topic, and started writing in handwriting so deliberately bad that it could barely be read, because I felt that was less embarrassing than my teacher actually see what I'd written. 2020 Mulan is kind of like that, except I was a teenager taking an exam that literally didn't even count towards my final grade, and this is a movie production with a budget of $200 million. Yes, I know, I'm planking, and you may think that's not that embarrassing because this is clearly old footage, but I can assure you this was 2016. I can't believe I've gone over how the action is bad without even mentioning how Mulan finally kills the villain by kicking an arrow at him. So the live action remake fails at action. Now all it's got left to fail at is live and remake. Well, it is definitely a remake, but let's see how well it understands what makes the original so good. Spoilers, it doesn't at all. Remember how much of a tongue bath I gave that scene at the beginning of the original? Because it takes a few seconds and one action to set up basically everything you need to know about Mulan as a character. Here's the equivalent scene in Mulan 2020. Mulan is now introduced to us as a child because reasons. We see her chasing a chicken that's escaped its pen despite her father telling her not to. The chicken climbs up onto the roof and Mulan nimbly climbs up after it, manages to get it to jump back down before, oh no, she falls off the roof and catches herself magically with bamboo. I don't know, maybe you guys should have considered some quicker cuts in that scene. Actually, I think there's one quick cut that could contribute a huge amount to this movie, and that's if you... Yeah, it's a joke about how the film would have been better if you cut straight to the credits. I'm very original. Actually, no, don't cut straight to the credits. Leave in those 4 frames of the Emperor's ass. Those were really important. So what does this new version of Mulan's introduction establish about her character? Well, from this it's quite clear that she's disobedient, disregarding instructions given to her.
Mulan, forget the chicken. It will come back.
From what we're presented, it seems she's just doing it because she enjoys it. This is some classic childlike mischief. This scene presents us a character who will go against authority just because she enjoys it. It's great that they've established this now, because that character trait goes on to be completely absent for the rest of the film. You may argue that, well, in the rest of the film she's an adult. You can't expect her to be the same as she was as a kid, and you'd be absolutely right. My point isn't that that doesn't make sense, it's that we have an introductory scene for a character in which we learn nothing important about who they are as a person in the time that we actually spend with them during this movie. Compare and contrast with the original. Of course, you can't really call it a character trait, but there is one other thing that this scene establishes about Mulan. In Mulan's introduction in the original, we learn about her innovative and creative mind, along with her disregard of the traditional way of doing things. Hugely important traits to both how she drives the plot forward and to the themes of the story. In this we learn she's a superhuman ninja who can do stuff with bamboo. Oh fuck yeah, that's a great substitute for ideas and character. The film later goes on to explain that Mulan is able to do all of this because she has good chi. Chi is a concept with historical Chinese cultural significance, but as far as we're concerned for this film, it's a magic system. It's what the witches use, and the film essentially does just say, she's really good at all this stuff because of magic. And by essentially, I mean, they don't say magic, they say chi.
The chi, the boundless energy of life itself, speaking through her every motion.
In this version of the story, Mulan's victories aren't won by her force of innovation and her creativity. They're won by her being a conventionally good soldier who's good at all the things that a soldier is supposed to be good at. Hey, remember the point of Mulan's character? There is one scene in this film where she solves a problem by being an innovative, out-of-the-box thinker, and we'll get to that scene, don't you worry. But by having it be something that's presented only once, the film is no longer giving it any significance as a character trait. Creativity creativity is no longer a pattern for her. The story that was about the value of imaginative thinking and innovative ideas is now about a character who's a conventionally good soldier who also, had a good idea that one time. Well, the film thought it was a good idea, but in this film, not even her decision to take her father's place is that innovative, because she's characterized as being a fighter, a warrior, right from the beginning. She literally trains with weapons, but is told as a woman her being a warrior isn't allowed.
But she is for warriors, not daughters.
Now, while it still does go against the standards of her society, it's not a moment of innovative thought. It's the obvious choice, really. The natural-born fighter wants to go and fight. Yeah, innovation isn't something this film spends any time presenting as valuable. Although, she does have one skill that the film sets up early on and then reuses over and over again instead of innovation. Kicking pointy things. Yay! Nearly every scene of innovation from the original is replaced in this film with her succeeding in a conventional way, but while also being a woman. Wow, this really says a lot about society. Bottom text, uwu, nya. But if you think that guts the message and meaning of the original, wait until you hear the driving force behind her arc in this version. It's time to talk about
Loyal, brave, and true.
Loyal, brave, and true.
Loyal. Brave. True.
The three virtues.
The sword is marked with the pillars of virtue.
Loyal, brave, true.
loyal, brave, and true, the pillars of virtue engraved on Mulan's sword. They are the expectations that China places upon its soldiers, the traditional values that they're expected to hold and adhere to. And the driving force behind Mulan's arc in this film is that she feels bad she can't meet them, because she has to lie about being a woman, so she can't be true. I want to start talking about this by showing you this scene, in which the new recruits that Mulan is a part of are told the soldier rules.
Desertion, penalty. Death, bring women into camp, penalty. Death, dishonesty, penalty. Expulsion.
Oh hey, if you try to leave, we'll kill you, but if you tell a lie, we'll make you leave. I see no potential loopholes here. Okay, so it seems pretty clear that at the very least, if Mulan being a woman is found out, she'll be expelled, something that she doesn't want. But taking the rules about women into account and the fact that she is one of those, there's also a very present risk she would be put to death. That's the penalty for bringing women into camp, and I'm pretty sure she did that. Anyway, after this...
Loyal. Brave. True.
Wow. She gets so concerned that she's not following the three virtues that she goes to confess to her commanding officer.
There's something that weighs heavily on my heart. I need to confess it to you.
We don't actually get to see the confession because her commander cuts her off and tells her that she's a good man and has nothing to worry about. But there she is. Mulan, so hung up on the idea that she can't meet the expectations placed on her by her culture that she's going to go and confess something that could get her put to death. Hey, remember the point of Mulan's character? Going forward, the film is completely uncritical of this outlook held by Mulan. Her desire to meet these virtues is what drives her to finally be true to herself, when mid-battle she decides to finally start being honest about the fact she's a woman, by letting her hair down and taking her armor off. I don't know, I feel like those things would still be helpful. This is presented as a victory by the film. This is the defining decision in her arc, and it's motivated by her trying to adhere to the culture that's holding her down in the first place. The original film is about questioning and progressing past a regressive society. The remake is about sucking off that society while also saying, yeah, but could you maybe let women go to war as well, thanks. I get that you like to force people to do things, but you're forcing some people into the wrong place, idiot! In the falling action of the film, after the main conflict has been resolved, Mulan has saved China and so they've forgiven her for being a woman, Mulan's former commander presents her with a gift. A sword engraved with these three virtues. You know, because she decided to throw her last one into her. The scene is here to congratulate her on meeting the virtues. Well done, you really upheld our ideals. Just to drive home that the film really doesn't get the point of the original at all. Should we quickly drive home how she's originally congratulated?
You stole your father's armor, impersonated a soldier, dishonored the Chinese army, destroyed my palace, and you have saved us all.
Oh! It's almost like there's a point here. You disregarded our ideals and in doing so saved us. Speaking of missing the point, the film is jam-packed with scenes that resemble scenes from the original, but they're only copied in superficial ways that don't demonstrate any understanding of the purposes they served originally. We have the avalanche scene from the original, except in this version she causes an avalanche by pretending there are a few soldiers by some snow with the hopes that the Ruran soldiers will fire a trebuchet at her, but miss her and hit the snow and cause the avalanche. Even though a trebuchet is a siege weapon used to destroy castle walls, not a precision tool for taking out infantry because it's not very accurate. It's just built for hurling a rock vaguely in the direction of a castle, a big thing that doesn't move. So maybe don't fire a rock at the infant. Oh my god, you did! And you missed! What a surprise, and now you're all dead. Okay. It's like the original, if it didn't make sense and wasn't meaningful. It's the only scene of what I'm going to generously call innovation in the film. The fact that in this film innovation isn't an idea that's been set up and reinforced by this point means it loses all that meaning it carried in the original. But I suppose it does still serve a plot purpose in this film. Compliments that really can't be extended to things like the woman test scene. In the original, it's our introduction to the culture that Mulan lives in and the issues with it. We're introduced both to the strict societal roles that people are expected to fit into and how Mulan interacts with them. In the remake, we still have that scene, but after all of that stuff has already been established. In other new scenes this film has added.
The chi is for warriors, not daughters.
The matchmaker has found you an auspicious match.
Yes, Mulan. It is decided.
Hey, I don't think she wants to be married off. But after all of these new scenes that have been injected in, that serve the same purpose as the scene in the original, we still get the scene from the original. But this time, it doesn't fucking do anything. It's just there. The audience already knowing all of the things that it was first written to establish. And since it doesn't serve its old function, did they give it some new function for this film? Did they fuck? It's just there. As a reminder that this film is a copy of another film that doesn't understand anything about why that original film works at all. I'll show you my favorite example of a scene like this. In the 1998 original, there's a scene where the group of soldiers that Mulan is a part of find the dead bodies of another battalion, completely wiped out. This is the battalion that Li Shang's father was in, and now he's dead. Li Shang is Mulan's commander in the original, and him finding out about the death of his father is a force that pushes forward his arc and his relationship with Mulan. That's why the scene is here. Li Shang isn't even a character in the remake, and none of the soldiers besides Mulan have had a father that's even been mentioned in the film. But there's still a scene where they find a dead battalion and go, oh, it's a dead battalion. And then that's it, and then they leave.
The 4th Battalion. This is the work of Bori Khan.
There's no one left.
We already knew that Bori Khan was slaughtering loads of people, and it has little to no impact on any of the characters for the rest of the film. It's just here, a shallow copy of an old good thing. Just like the whole fucking film. And it can be yours for the low price of $30 plus your existing Disney Plus subscription. What a deal! That's all I have for you today, but speaking of deals, I've got a great one for you, don't click off yet. Have you ever wanted to give me money? Well, now you can! There's now a little join button on my channel, so if you want to, you can press it, become a member, and support my videos. To say thank you, I'll give you exclusive access to some commentary tracks I'm going to make on some of my videos. You'll get a little rhino badge next to your name, and you'll get to use some exclusive emotes in my comments section and live chat. You'll also get in my video credits. Please don't feel obligated in any way though. Thank you, and goodbye.